My name is Bill Mewborn, and I was a practicing veterinarian a couple miles down the road.
My name is Ted Ligibel, and at the time I was just beginning a career which has stayed with me in historic preservation. And so I was very interested in the site as a potential historic preservation project.
Well, I go back to Robert A. Stranahan and riding horseback here when I was 10 years old, early 50s. And I approached Bob Metz and those guys thinking that this should be a park. And they had already tried it before and they didn't have the money, so the fight started there.
Like Bill, I have a long history at the property. My grandfather had an imported food business in downtown Toledo, A. Wrench and Company. And as a boy, I would bring deliveries out to the Stranahans. And so the place always held a certain mystique for me. And the furthest I ever got was the kitchen, because I would drop off, whatever it was, brie cheese or whatever they had ordered. But there was an incredible fascination. I think one time I dropped the stuff off and kind of wandered down the hall a little bit just to get a good look at the house. But there was always a strong mystique about it. It's set back off Central Avenue. You could see it in the winter when the leaves were down, and you could see through the trees. You could see these beautiful columns, but it was sort of like Tara. It was off in the distance in this untouchable place. So I think that probably had something to do with so many people's interest in it, that it was like this place you never would get to.
The curiosity, sure.
The curiosity was massive, and you'd never have a chance ever to come on this estate. So here was everybody's opportunity, potentially, to come to this place and see it. So I think it always held a fascination for people. The local community was always very aware it was the Stranahan estate. And in the surrounding area, of course, we have the DeVilbiss estate a little further to the north, which is now, I think, Camp Mayaconda. So it was kind of an interesting part of the town.
Stranahan bought this from DeVilbiss.
Oh, he originally bought it from DeVilbiss.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So there's huge parcels of land out here that there's no other way you could have assembled land like this, even in the 70s. This was just a rare opportunity to...
Reynolds Road used to come down. Instead of stopping at Central, it crossed and went down on the angle along in between the railroad tracks. And Stranahan, due to his power, politics, or whatever, he had it taken off the map. Mm-hmm. He ended Reynolds where it is now, thank goodness.
Well, but I remember when they came out with the plans for the subdivision here, that it continued. And for me, that was one of the most powerful statements. I'm looking at this beautiful estate and realizing there's going to be roads and houses everywhere. Everybody could drive through it, I suppose, but it would not be this pristine, beautiful estate.
Well, the fight within the fight, they were going to bring the Reynolds Road down here, cut behind the manor house and tie into Corey, make a single diamond, a double diamond.
Oh, geez.
And that was a big fight. Yeah, the riding horseback here with Robert A. III back in the 50s. And you rode all the trails and everything, and that's when I had my first inkling, way back then, this would make a nice park. And that's, I guess there's some kids behind us, and this was done for them. All right, my name is Bill Mewborn, and a practicing veterinarian in Sylvania when this all started. Just riding horseback with Robert A. III, and he and I were classmates in Ottawa Hills. And Paul Schnitker was the guy we usually came out with, and we rode all the trails through the creeks. It was nice. That's when the arena was still standing, and they had an old Wells Fargo wagon in there, and we'd jump from the horses to the wagon because we thought we were Roy Rogers at the time.
My name is Ted Ligibel, and my earliest memories are actually when I would make deliveries here for my grandfather, who had an imported food business back in the 50s and 60s. Actually, it would have been the 60s, probably early to mid 60s. As sort of this big grand estate that I only got to see a tiny piece of, that is the driveway and the kitchen. But then later on, when the effort to save the estate began, I had just started my career in historic preservation and was working for the Landmarks Committee of the Maumee Valley Historical Society. And this became quite a well-known issue, and so I got wrapped up in it from the very beginning. You got to know I was raised in the 60s and 70s at a time of social activism, and I was very much a part of that. So this was a first foray for me into trying to change something and make something happen for the good of the larger community. I don't know if you want the politics, but that's what motivated. It's what motivated. I mean,
It's really
for me, this was a game changer. It really was.
I mean, if you think about it, it's a classic struggle. You had the construction industry on the other side, meaning the big money and the economics. Mr. Weber, you'll get your interview.
I was good friends with the Melhorns because Kathy, who was my agent at Ottawa Hills, I was over there a lot after delivering the newspapers in the morning and cooking breakfast and that. And they always treated me with a lot more respect than the Stranahans wanted them to. Yep, Marshall, Melhorn, Block, and Belt. And Belt is the one that first wrote the letter to me about stay off the land when we got Steve Pollock in here from the Blade to cover some stuff. And then from there it went uphill for me because they all knew me. I just lived behind over here between off of Holland, Sylvania and Central. And having been here, I approached Bob Mitz, the director at the time, and said, let's make this a park. And unbeknownst to me, they had already put feelers out and so forth, but the price was way too high. And I said, well, we're going to do it anyway. So we did it. They were all gone. Robert A. Jr. was back down across the creek here. And then there was a Mr. Black, who was the night watchman here, who came out one night with a gun, wondering what I was doing wandering the property. This is in the late 60s. And Lloyd Webb was the maintenance guy in his 80s at that time, and he loved the idea of what we were doing. But he said, just don't tell anybody when I let you in here and let you in there. He said, if you can get support from the community and show us. So I had someone write up, maybe it was you, Art, that all they had to do was fill in their name and sign it and put the name of the group, garden clubs and service clubs and the township trustees all around. I'd go give my spiel and talk them into signing. It didn't cost them anything to sign. Why not? They got their name in the paper. Right. I was here as a child, 10, when his grandmother lived here up on the second floor and had her meals on the second floor veranda overlooking the area they kept mowed and putting hay in so she could eat and view all the deer. And then as I got older, of course, there wasn't much left. Oh, there used to be a riding stable across Holland, Sylvania. And all through high school, guys' stables. I'd come back in here with horses and no problem. I never heard that. I just took it upon myself to get kind of pushy. Well, I came to see Bob Metz, and he let me speak to the Gideon Speaker and Bill Smith, and who was the other one on the board? Was he on the board
John
way
Yeager.
back then? Okay, yeah. Well, they put the challenge out about getting, and I think we had 112 sheets of people signing up and so forth. Groups. All the political subdivisions around Sylvania Township signed on, but not Sylvania Township. They wanted this to become a development so they could get more tax money. I worked 1 day a week because my partner didn't want to take, work 5 days a week and week and me not any. But that's history. That you can get that. Greg's going to get that from you.
From you, Bill.
Well,
Man,
it's,
you were talking to groups every night.
How important was this to you? Tell me what kind of role this campaign became into your life.
Dedicated to the point of absurdity, probably. It was just, because we were losing pretty much any polls up until probably a month before, and this started a year and a half before.
The point that I got involved, I think, was when the local landmarks committee, and you may have even addressed this, I can't remember it, I think you did,
Yeah.
decided to take a stand and support it. And I had just started working for them, so I was just a worker bee. I mean, let's be honest. It was really Bill Mewborn and John Lusk that carried the day and that did all the heavy lifting. We were just the workers out there, the support team, making this all, getting the word out to, really the biggest thing was getting the word out to the entire county. But these guys were at the top of that, and it wouldn't have happened if you two hadn't stepped up and essentially given up your lives for what amounted to at least a year.
Art and some of the staff here worked on this tabloid, the newspaper. And Charity Kruger, who was with the Ag Center and Wildlife Rehab at the time, her classes went out almost daily to deliver them. I think we figured we covered 80% of the community, door to door, dropping these off.
Yeah, that was a remarkable experience. We gave up a lot of weekends just to make sure everybody got the information. And I really think that had a major impact, because I think that kind of surprised a lot of people, that there were that many people really interested and dedicated to doing this, that you'd see them. I know some areas we did twice.
And the last thing we did was we got a Paul Block, who John Lusk was close to. We went down and we told him what was going on. And Steve Pollock, and who was the guy that wrote the article that I can't. No, the other guy.
No, it was
Which article are you
the guy before Steve. What was his name? The outdoor writer.
No,
That was Steve.
no, it was.
Wasn't there a guy
This was
before?
another guy that kind of did it. But anyway,
Wasn't Lou Campbell?
no, I remember.
Campbell was with the Times. It might have been Kluwer, but I don't remember.
Lou Kluwer, that's who I was thinking
No, it
of.
wasn't.
I
But
think Kluwer wrote it.
oh,
But there were some general beat reporters that did some.
No, this gentleman was at the meeting. I remember Paul Block putting his arm around him and walking him to the window and telling him that
I know who you're talking. You're talking about Mike Tressler.
Yes.
The editor of
Oh.
Toledo Magazine.
yes,
He wasn't the writer. He was the editor.
oh,
Paul was giving him his marching orders to
Right.
get somebody to write an article.
yeah. And if you
Turned
don't
out
do
to
this
be-
right, everyone in Toledo. And in the pictorial section, it was the largest article up till that time in 19. Back in
and that was definitely a
73.
turning point too.
And it was
There's no question
yeah,
about
and Paul Block told us later, it came out so close to the election, he didn't plug that in. He said he may not have done it. But that had pictures of Cavalier and John Lusk and I and all kinds of good stuff in it. Nine or 10 pages, all are part of. And one picture, I think you pointed out, was upside down in the pictorial.
It was a reflection.
It was a reflection, but they had the reflection up and the trees down.
Yeah, well, hey, it's still got a lot of votes.
You bet.
it. Enough, at least.
Yeah.
The beauty of a democracy.
The best photo was you and John.
Yeah.
Well, we were out there on the fence, and John, I just pointed with John. He said, "Don't wear a suit, dress casual." Okay. And we sat on the fence, and I said, "John, look up there like that." And the blade snapped it. It looked like we were looking at a hawk or something. It was a tree branch.
Didn't matter.
No.
It did the trick. Well, so should we talk about the deer story? Is this the time?
Yeah,
we
go
wanna-
ahead. That's
Well, you started it.
well. A client called, and there was a deer in a culvert ditch right next to their home, and it kept sliding and falling, and because of the moss on it. So I left the office full of clients and that, and went over and picked it up, and then we dropped it off some barn over here behind Central Avenue, and where Honda is, all back in that area. And we were thinking, how can we make this pay? And the idea was to get the blade out. And I guess you said that Dr. Bill Smith on the board got one of the groups out, but we let that deer go, and he walked out. It was like he was paid. He walked out, and he turned around and looked back at us, like he was saying goodbye, and bounded off.
It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, and
There's no doubt
Ted
about
carried the deer from my car because he was under me in those days.
I'm still under you.
Yeah, right.
Well, we wrapped it in a old sleeping bag. You know, unzipped it and wrapped it up and laid it in the back of Bill's station wagon, and then I laid back there with the thing, and there was another person, and I just don't. It was a woman. I just don't remember her name, unfortunately. And we sort of were stroking. It was very calm, which was it's sort of eerie that it was that calm. It even licked our hands, and then we dragged it out and put it over the fence, which of course we shouldn't have, not supposed to even be here. Word had gotten out, and by that time there was dozens of people there to witness this event. And it really, I think, was another one of those turning points, at least for me,
Yeah.
when the thing sort of stomped around, turned around, and looked at all of us.
Wasn't that down by the
That took
apple
off.
orchard? Wasn't it, where we let it go? Yeah.
Right out here. And then I'll never forget that, watching the thing bound off into the woods, seeing the white tail flapping. And I think that was, and Channel 11 was there filming it, and I think Bill Smith maybe took some footage for
Bill
Channel
Smith was there.
24, I think. And that was the weekend right before the election.
Yes.
So we certainly,
The Sunday before the Tuesday.
the timing was not a mistake. Except,
It wasn't?
well, we happened to have this live deer, right? What do you do?
What are you
You
gonna
could have
do with
just
a
let
live
it
deer?
go, but
Yeah.
it was too good to pass up.
He could have been dinner.
He could, he may still have been.
In my entire vet career, I think I had 3 deer that I worked on. We had this deer, and we want to use it to somehow
Right.
help the effort to
I
make
think
this
I think
a
it
park.
was almost at a certain point just became obvious what we needed to do. Well, Bill had been keeping it in a barn right out on
Right over here,
yeah,
off of Central.
until it fully recuperated, because it I don't think it actually broke a bone. Did it? It
No,
was
and
just in shock.
We could have let him go 3 days later, but we had to use him.
So that, it just sort of, I think, became a logical extension of, honestly, everything you could do to get PR, positive PR, and maybe it was even some negative PR. Anything you could do
Oh, yeah.
at that point was considered a good thing. Because there were a lot of people who didn't even know where the place was, or were put off enough by it that they sort of drive by it and kind of ignore it because it was untouchable. Which adds to the mystique, It's like, whoa, you mean we might be able to? And I think we have to remember, after all the work everybody put in, it won, but it wasn't a huge majority.
No. Well, we had the 73, the oil embargo, price of gas, and we used that. You could get to anywhere in Lucas County to one of the parks within 10 minutes, and it's free.
So the motto and I don't remember when this seems to me it was late but the motto was, the Stranahan estate isn't expensive, it's priceless.
That's Virginia Clifford, and that was what was on our tabloid. And that was the best thing anybody came up with.
Hand me my thing and we'll hold up the tabloid.
We had it on signs and all kinds of stuff.
So this is the actual tabloid that we handed to every homeowner or put it in their door. Landmarks Committee, Maumee Valley Historical Society came out and was quoted.
You weren't important enough to get your
I
name
wasn't
in it,
even
though.
anybody at the time.
But boy, you are now.
No, I don't know about that.
This was my idea.
The choice that
And
counts.
everybody
Oh, yeah.
uses it now.
Everybody uses it now.
Yeah.
There was
We were the
there was a
first one.
citizen steering committee.
I said, tell them what's going to cost a year. And when if they had a $50,000 house, which is kind of average,
And John actually.
Right.
we can do it for $7 to $9, and the majority of people in Toledo were in the 30 and
Probably
below.
in the 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're like, what, $5 a year? It's like,
Yeah, we can get even with that, Mr. Cavalier.
is he gone now? Did he die?
So
Did-
maybe that, we're trying to
we
figure
know?
out some things we should cover while both of you are there. And one of the things that occurs to me is
Yeah. Oh,
those
thank you.
meetings, those weekly meetings that we would have leading up to the campaign. Some of the people around that table were real
Powerhouses.
people. Remember Doug DeGood?
Doug DeGood.
Norm Clark.
Yeah. Joan Beck.
So a lot of people that became really important.
And maybe, when did Kimball get involved? Because I know he was the first president of the Citizens Group. So he had to be in there. I don't remember working with him on the campaign, but
First time I saw Jim was